Making It in the Toy Industry, episode number 245.
Welcome to Making It in the Toy Industry, a podcast for inventors, entrepreneurs, and makers like you. And now, your host, Azhelle Wade.
Hey there, toy people. Azhelle Wade here, and welcome back to another episode of Making It in the Toy Industry. This is a weekly podcast brought to you by thetoycoach.com. Today's guest is Aaron Muderick, the innovative founder behind Crazy Aaron's Thinking Putty. From a childhood passion for tinkering to a successful career in Silicon Valley, Aaron's journey took a creative turn when he discovered a love for putty. With no formal training in chemistry or business, somehow Aaron built Crazy Aaron's from the ground up, creating a line of thinking putty and other compounds that inspire creativity, curiosity, and fun. Through persistence, innovation, and a deep connection to his customers, Aaron has managed to outlast trends that came in and came out like our slime craze. And today he's here to share his insights on staying relevant in a fast-moving industry. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Azhelle. Thank you for having me.
Aaron, to kick this conversation off, can you finish this sentence for me? The thing that surprised me most about the toy industry was...
It's adults making the decisions.
Really? Wait, that was surprising.
Yeah. I mean, you invent and create with a sort of a childlike wisdom and wonder.
Yeah.
But really, it's buyers and then parents.
Yeah.
And then eventually, hopefully, you can reach a child and ignite their passion.
Yeah, I remember there being an inside joke when I started working where people would say, toy designers don't design toys, Walmart designs toys. I
don't know that I would go quite that far, but depending on the company you work for, it may be more or less true.
No, yeah, that's true. Like the more mass that are just kind of chasing whatever the buyers want, just want to make them happy so they can stay in that space and don't care about integrity or don't have their own vision for their brand. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, you're totally right on that. So I'd love to start out talking about, you're in the compound side of the toy industry. There was a huge craze, I think it was around 2018 for slime, but you are a staple. You're not a fly-by-night slime operation, you know? So how did you establish such a permanent footprint in an area which some might have seen as a trend, not here to last?
Sure. Many thought it would come and go. I thought they'd be wrong. It was just, I really loved what I was doing.
Oh.
And when you look at the business, which has been 26 years, the first 12 were making thinking putty, figuring out how to make it, how to develop it, how to make it unique and different and push the envelope of what was possible, the innovative form factor, the big handfuls, but none of it was selling to children. It was 100% selling to grownups who sit at their desk and need stress relief. It wasn't until 2010 that I was dragged sort of kicking and screaming into it, exhibiting at Toy Fair and taking on wholesale toy stores as customers.
Wow.
So it had really good bones. It had been proven, and it had been proven in a very unorthodox way that grownups liked it. And traditionally, compounds were sold really focused on children, like the slimier, the gooier, the goopier, the grosser, the better. And thinking putty wasn't any of those things. And I guess, even more people liked it once it started showing up in retail.
Would you say it was easier for you to develop thinking putty for adults than versus kids?
Well, it was easier in the sense I wasn't developing it for adults. I was developing it for me.
Right.
I was developing it for me personally as something to play with at my desk because I was coding. And as a software engineer, I was very fidgety. I needed help. So I was solving my own problem. And if you are a designer and you're sort of 110% into you solving your problem, you're going to do a good job, right? You really understand it. You didn't miss a market trend report. You are the market.
Right.
And then entertaining and amusing my coworkers and my friends and my family and sort of that circle of people around me. And then in 2010, entering the toy business with a toy that had been established. But now we have to learn, okay, how do I make this merchandisable on a retail shelf? It's not just sold on a website. How do I communicate its properties to people who aren't hearing about it virally from their coworker, but actually need to see a retail box and understand what they're looking at, why it's different, why it's new, why it's better? That was that journey from sort of 2010 onward.
Well, we've talked before about how you were working as a software developer when you created Crazy Aaron's, and you said that this discovery for putty was accidental. How did this happen?
Well, it was me being fidgety and having a hard time sitting still for, 8 to 10 hours a day doing my job. And so sort of still being fairly young, I was 23, just getting some toys, going to Zany Brainy, which was a East Coast toy chain at the time, and trying different things, trying to figure out like what would entertain me, what would keep me engaged. And it was that egg of putty that was the thing that, as much as I loved it, it was too small. I wanted more. And it sent me down a crazy hole to figure out how to make it better. Of course, it would not be inexpensive to buy lots and lots of them. And I was young and poor and thought maybe if I learned how to make it, I could move up the supply chain, so to speak, and get it a little cheaper.
So you had no experience in chemistry, but
I had zero. In fact, my high school, the year before I took chemistry, the school board voted to remove chemistry lab because it wasn't required by the state.
Oh, wow.
So we just flipped through a textbook.
How did you use your background in tech and computer science to figure out how to make a putty line?
Sure. One was I was very familiar with using computers and the internet and everything that was in the internet, which was much, much smaller, orders of magnitude smaller. Right. But, the U.S. Patent Library is available online, so I can read through that. And then I realized I'm reading Greek. I don't understand any of it, but slowly but surely trying to figure out the language of patents and what's in them and what's not in them, and also sort of the misdirections that are in them, because people publish patents to tell you how to do something, but they also aren't looking to help their competitor gain an edge. It was obsessive passion that I wanted to do this. It just seemed like something that I wanted to accomplish, and I wasn't going to stop until I had learned all the things necessary to make it happen.
So wait, what was the first moment? So you're at your desk, you're buying the egg putty, you're playing with it. I guess for some reason wanted to experiment, make your own. Mm-hmm. What was the first point when somebody else saw it and said, "Oh, I'd pay you for that. Where can I get some?"
So it was very soon after I had probably put 7 or 8 little eggs together to make a nice handful that I noticed the piece was getting smaller day by day. And I could not figure out why it was getting smaller. Was it evaporating? Was some of it melting off the side of the desk? But, my piece that I had made to the size of my hand was no longer to the size of my hand. And it turned out it was my coworkers all stealing a little piece for themselves when I wasn't looking.
That is so funny. So why didn't they just go buy their own egg at this toy store?
It's free if you take it from me.
No, I'm genuinely curious. So I want to bring me back to this entrepreneurial moment, because I'm the type of person where every 5 seconds I do something and I'm like, this is a business idea. So I want to know, what was the moment where you were like, this is a business idea? And then what were the steps you did?
Right. I was collecting putty to, make a chunk that I could play with. Then I noticed it's getting smaller. It says there's that little light bulb that's like, other people like this too, right? I'm not a total freak. Other people like this. And other people weren't willing to they didn't have in their mind, I want to go out and get some putty and play with it at work. But when they saw someone else doing it, they were like, oh, maybe. And then they take a piece themselves and then they're hooked. And that just triggered in me that it wasn't just me. Other people like this too. And so then I started thinking about how I could get more grand. How do I get more? How do I make a bigger chunk? Yeah. How do I make even more?
And then what'd you do? You went home and you bought some borax?
What'd you do? I just went to every arts and crafts store and the grocery store and started buying things and mixing them in giant, heavy contractor bags with my feet to try to see how it would come together. I burned out a KitchenAid mixer trying to make putty.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was easy to burn it out. It was harder to realize that to replace it was like $250.
Oh, wow. So tell me about the first day you walked into work with your basket full of putty.
So actually, the big reveal wasn't putty that I had made myself. But during this process, I had taken up an office pool. And it was a pool for everyone to kick in money. And I was going to buy 100 pounds from Silly Putty.
Oh, you're like a reseller. You're like a distributor. You're like,
well, I was working parallel paths here, right? I just wanted more putty. I mean, this wasn't a business. I wasn't thinking of quitting my job. I just wanted more putty. People were asking for putty. It was fun to do this pool. People thought it was crazy. So I did it. And I came in with 100 pounds. I had found a phone number and dialed until finally someone agreed. Yes, if you send a check and you wait 21 days for the check to clear, then we will send you the 100 pounds. And also don't call again. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, what?
And the 100 pounds came and it transformed that office culture. I mean, not only did everyone who was in the pool get their putty and it was dripping from monitors and people are playing with it in meetings and we're using it in client engagements, but then all of the people who had turned me away when I came around desk by desk, hey, how many pounds do you want? Right? They were like, get out of here, go back to work, Aaron. Then they were coming to my desk and they were like, do you have any more? Is there any extra? Oh, wow. I showed some to my kids. I showed some to my wife. I need more. And so it was very organic and viral. And then I sort of put up the money for the next 100 and then the next 100. And then at that point started to transition into, oh, well, what if I mix these things together? Can I replicate that? Can I make it myself? Oh, next light bulb moment. Actually, I can make it better and different.
Yes. Let's talk about that. That.
Everything around us is designed. Yeah. I mean, literally, you look at the frame behind me. Everything here was thoughtfully designed by another person.
Someone took time. They were in SolidWorks or some plan tool. They were planning out those beams and that arc. Yeah.
So everything that you see was a series of choices. Mm-hmm. And so that original putty in an egg was a series of choices primarily designed around making it cost as little as possible. And there were historical reasons. The materials used to cost significantly more. Mm-hmm. So really it was sort of a driving force to make a product that people could afford. But then also 50 years, 60 years of, well, could we make it a little cheaper? Could we make an extra penny? What could we shave? What could we save? And in doing so, making a product that wasn't nearly as visually or tactily engaging as it could be. And if I was just doing this for fun and to sell to my friends and family and coworkers, well, I could put a little more into it and realizing I could make some different choices and make it more beautiful and more incredible.
When you got to retail, was it the innovation of your putty that caught the retailer's eye first, or the name that you'd built for yourself through all the work you'd done before you went to retailers?
I don't know exactly what it was, but I do know that although I had success on a website selling putty for $10, $15 for a can instead of $1 for an egg.
Yeah.
Convincing the retailers was definitely a bit of an uphill battle. Right? Why is this product that is a $1 product suddenly, different sizes, $4, $10, $15?
Yeah.
They just didn't see it because their minds work differently in terms of merchandising, shelf space,
footprint,
price points,
square, dollar per square foot. They're like, I don't know, this egg took up this much space. Your can's taking up this much. I don't know, sir.
Everything. What made it work was a number of, I would say, first mover specialty toy stores who brought the product in because they are a little more, try a hunch. I'll put in $250 wholesale order and I'll see what happens, right? They're a little more experimental. They're less data driven because they don't have access to giant quantities of data. They don't have teams of analysts.
Right.
So they sort of shoot from the hip a little more. And in doing that, they brought it into their stores and by gosh, it sold. It sold well. And then they were back and then they were telling other people on internet mailing lists for specialty toy stores, hey, this is actually working. And then the sales reps get involved and they're like, oh, I'm selling something that actually sells. And, then you have a snowball rolling down the hill.
Did you have demo samples in the store when they sold through like that?
One of my really strong beliefs is if a store asks you for demos, you give them demos, right? Like they're telling you that they're going to invest their time and their staff in showing off in their space and showing off your product.
Yeah.
So we've always had a very liberal demo sample policy. And I think that has paid off.
Yeah. I was going to say, everyone thinks it's all about getting your product into the store, but if your product doesn't sell once it gets into the store, it's not going to get back in and they're not going to order
and then
again.
The retailer just comes to you and says they want their money back. So you actually are upside down because from the retailer's perspective, the product costs zero. Because ultimately they can get their money back, a large retailer, right?
And that's called a chargeback for those listeners.
But that's called a chargeback. But unfortunately for you, the product didn't cost you zero.
Yeah.
So now you are upside down.
Yeah.
And that is not a place you ever want to be.
Yes. Was there anything that you did to ensure you would sell through, or you were like, we just had a really good product, I didn't have to do anything, it just sold through?
I mean, what we did was not sell into mass merchandisers for probably 8 years. I think we entered Target in 2017 or 2018.
Okay.
That was our first mass retailer.
Last follow-up question then on this topic, and then we'll move on to our next topic. I encourage my students to not rush to mass market for the same reason. But how did you make sure you were going to run a profitable business that was big enough to support, your livelihood, based mostly on specialty and online sales? Is there a lot of profit margin awareness? Is it just working with a really slim team? Is it because, the thing that we've talked about before, how you have very narrow footprints that you're working with, so you're not trying to do a ton of different things? Like, I feel like there's some creators out there that struggle to make it profitable with those specialty retailers. And I think it's because they're doing too much, but I would love to hear your thoughts.
Part of that success at specialty was the compactness of our product and how, we went from sort of being pegged, if they had pegs, or sitting on a shelf, to building a store display that gave it a home, that encouraged refilling. You would be surprised at how many specialty stores, when a shelf runs empty on goods, they just slide the goods on the left and the right together to fill the hole, and they don't necessarily place a reorder. Now, a savvy specialty store owner doesn't do that. But when you're dealing with thousands of accounts, like, you need a home for your brand, right? So that investment in that display, which ultimately the manufacturer is paying for, that's what you're getting. But I think for us, it was the compactness of sort of dollars per square foot, which was very attractive for them. I think for someone else, it could be 100 different variables, but if you have 100, how can you find the 3 most important? You do need to focus. You need to focus down on what's key for you.
I like that. Oh, actually, this is I've done this exercise before. Someone had me create like a chart where at the left, so imagine like a table on Excel, and the left column says all your products. And then the top was something like a rating system from 1 to 5, being like how much you enjoy it or how much you don't. I think that's what it was. And then I think there's another rating system for how much money it brings you and how much it doesn't. And you kind of go through that with all the products. And at the end, you find, okay, this thing, which for me, it's like Toy Creators Academy, generates the most money in my business and also is the thing I enjoy the most. So I wonder if that's also an exercise people need to do to see, maybe I'm just doing too much. If all these other products are causing more complex logistics and they're not turning the revenue, maybe that's not where I need to focus. Otherwise, my business is not going to survive.
If you looked at Crazy Aaron's 5 years ago, we were a one product company.
Oof.
Right? We had 100 SKUs, but it's one product. It's Thinking Putty. And some of this is just luck, right? I had an idea. I had a thing that I loved. It also turned out other people loved it too.
Yeah.
Right. That the thing that you love isn't always the thing that millions of people also love. But given that was true, we were able to focus on doing one thing and doing it really well. We did it in red, green, blue, magnetic, color changing, et cetera, but we were doing one thing. Yeah. And I do see a lot of toy companies who are spread too thin, especially when they are too small, but also too large, where people are chasing revenue. And they think the way they're going to do that is adding more pages to the catalog.
Yes.
And if all of your products are mediocre, then all of your sales are going to be mediocre.
Yes.
Now, you might be able to grow that into a bigger number, but is it going to propel you as a brand? Is it going to give you momentum? Is it buying you credibility? I'd say that's an open question. The other thing that just, I don't know that this can happen for everyone, but was true for us, was we controlled our own manufacturing, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that we make is made here in Philadelphia, and it's formulas that I've come up with and machines that I have worked to build and a factory that we do it in.
So cool.
That's not going to happen. And most people who are getting into the toy business don't want to have a toy factory, nor could they domestically have a cost-effective factory when they're competing with Asian production. But I do see that a lot of people, they go to the fairs, they go to Canton Fair, they go over there and they look around and they're given these giant catalogs of products. And so they're like, sure, I'll make some packaging and I'll buy all this, instead of focusing on how can I see this one product that I was shown and how do I give input to that manufacturer to really twist it a little to make it great, take it from mediocre to great? Or how do I take my idea, which is great, and then when I show it to a factory who's going to build it, it kind of comes back mediocre. Mm-hmm. Do I need to push a little harder to make it wonderful?
Yeah.
Because I only have one shot to impress people.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so great. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Taking us to church on the podcast. So we know the toy industry, there's been a growing conversation around sustainability. You mentioned that your products are made locally in Philadelphia. Was that because of a desire to be a sustainable company or to maintain control over the product development production process?
Well, it was primarily a desire not to spend most of my life in an aluminum tube.
Wait, what? Oh, in an airplane. Okay.
Like, That was number one. I had small children. I didn't want to be away.
Oh.
And then second was realizing if you have a secret formula and you give it to a factory 9,000 miles away, it doesn't stay secret for very long.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many NDAs you have or how many years you have a relationship with someone. They have workers too. Like people go around, they talk, and it's only secret as long as it's secret. Right? Patents, you have a little more protection, but you have to finance the enforcement. Right. And you don't have any money to begin with. So you're already upside down after spending $10,000 to $15,000 working to get a patent. Where are you going to find the $150,000 to enforce it when someone knocks you off?
Oh, okay. But all right, I gotta, sorry, we're not leaving this section because you keep bringing up new questions. So I launched a costume company years ago and I stayed made in the US for the same reason. Because I was like, my patterns are genius and they're going to steal it because why wouldn't they? I would. No, I'm kidding. But like, why wouldn't they? So I found seamstresses locally and I worked with them locally and produced the product. But my product was really expensive. And I foolishly, looking back now, I think I tried to make too much margin. I tried to make the standard Keystone margin, knowing that my costs were higher because I was doing small quantities in the US. And I look back and I'm like, I could have gotten away with doing 25%. And I probably would have sold a lot more and stayed in business a bit longer, more successfully. How did you manage the cost of producing in the US? Did you take a smaller margin when you first started and then were able to give yourself more as you increase production?
There are economies of scale as you grow.
Yeah.
So that you can increase your margin, right? You get a bigger piece of equipment, you become more automated, right. You are buying bigger and getting better pricing. So all of those things can work in your favor. I guess the other piece of growing the business was I didn't just have that episode where I sold everyone 100 pounds of putty and then I quit my job and started making putty. I did it for 4 more years, working my putty job at nights and weekends until it got to the point where, I was dying, right? We had a Christmas where I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, maybe this is the moment to quit. And I remember looking at putting together a spreadsheet, calling my accountant, like vetting that, because I didn't know anything about finance or bookkeeping, trying to understand like what I was doing, even at the small scale that I was doing it, and saying to myself, well, I can pay the rent and I can eat ramen. I think I'll be okay. I'm going to try this.
Did you hire help while you were working full time?
No, because the other piece of advice my accountant gave me was avoid having employees for as long as possible.
Oh, man.
Right? The internet, this is a long time ago. The internet wasn't nearly where it is now.
Oh,
the gig economy wasn't nearly where it is now. So, and we're making a physical product and we're doing it here. So it's not like I would have a graphic designer, on call or like my factory in China. I don't have those things, right? I'm literally making the putty, breaking it up, putting it in the cans, putting the labels on, putting a sticker on it and getting it out the door.
How many hours were you working?
All of the hours.
For 4 years.
It didn't start being, slammed like that, but it progressed over time. And obviously the holidays were absolutely bonkers. But at that point, and then getting that advice not to hire direct employees, I started working with social services. And that's how we became involved with the intellectually and physically disabled community and working with social services centers that helped individuals like that find work, have work, develop their skills. And so until we opened our factory, on our own ground in 2010, we spent probably 8 or 9 years co-located in a social services agency, buying equipment, showing them how to use it, making special accommodations because the employees there had special needs, either like special needs like maybe not strong enough, physically to turn a dial, but also impulsiveness that they might reach into a machine and try to bypass a guard and get themselves hurt.
Dear.
So we had to do all kinds of things to sort of upgrade standard equipment, which would be considered safe by OSHA standards, to make them sort of extra special safe, almost if they were being used by younger children.
What kept you driven to solve all of these problems and to keep doing all of this? Why were you building this?
It just seemed, I got letters from people who love the product. It made them happy. I got all kinds of inspirational, feedback from my consumers that drives me personally. It felt like now we were closing the loop, making a product that made people happy, maybe building it in a way that was doing social good. It just seemed like a full circle. It seemed like a smart thing to keep doing.
Yeah, I agree. Consumers, if you love a product, send us an email, a letter. If you're listening to this podcast and you like it, tell me, because we need motivation. It gets hard out here, So
yeah,
certainly.
All right.
Let's move on. I'd love to talk a little bit about the trends outliving the slime craze of 2018. I would say after 2018, slime was dead, yet Crazy Aaron's is the compound that will live forever. How did you navigate the surge in slime popularity? Did it help? Did it lift your business? Did you feel afraid for the competition? Or were you just like, I'm beyond this? Like, how
Yeah, absolutely. If I was in a different place in my life, I probably would have leaned into slime sooner, right? We make putty, and putty is not slime,
right?
And it's its own thing.
Its own
But
compound.
given the sort of that consumers don't see those differences quite as strongly, it would have made sense for Crazy Aaron's to move into slime and try to be dominant in slime and sort of try to steer where slime was going, right?
Yeah.
But slime did its thing on its own. It definitely helped us. But when it was dead, it didn't hurt us because we weren't slime.
Right.
And also, we were growing. And growing in the sense of there are always more retailers and customers. You know, if you are a Hasbro or a Mattel or a Spin Master, you are saturated. Your salespeople are calling on every place that could possibly sell your product. So the way you grow your sales is to grow consumer demand, to pull it off the shelf at a higher velocity, or to have a new product that has a high velocity that sort of replaces something older that wasn't as high velocity. But for a smaller company, for someone who's starting out, well, you can double the number of stores you're in. You can get another mass retailer. There aren't that many of them, but if you have 0, you can bring it to 1. And if you have 1, you can bring it to 2. And that is going to drive your business, even when sort of that like viral momentum falls away. And that's what we did. And, we didn't have any problem with it. What we did see was a lot fewer people making copycats of our product. Because all those people who chase the trends, they're reading data reports and they're like, this is what's selling, so we're going to copy that. But the second all that slime stops selling, they move on to copy the next thing. They don't have an investment in a factory. They don't have employees making a specific kind of product. They just go to Canton Fair and they get something else and try to sell.
I'm surprised you didn't have like customers that maybe the first retailers that bet on you that your product was selling so well when the slime trend was happening. They're like, dude, can you just put some slime in this can? Like it will sell. Please just do it.
That's exactly what they said. I just didn't do it.
You just didn't do it?
I just didn't do it. I liked the putty. I liked what I liked. And I also had my hands full growing and building this company. It wasn't like it was sort of stagnant and I was like, I don't care. I just don't want to do anything. Yeah. We were growing really fast and trying to professionalize internally, build a real company, not just a startup. And you can only take on so many challenges at once.
Gosh.
And that was a strategic decision.
So if you had plateaued, if your putty had plateaued, do you think you would have said, all right, fine, I'll make a slime SKU?
I think I would have said, how do I work harder to communicate how great putty is?
Wow, damn, focus. Okay. All right, focus.
But ultimately, I started, as I got more involved in the toy business and had a better picture of it as a business, started to see, okay, like what are the other kinds of products that Crazy Aaron's can make that we can do well, that makes sense to a consumer, but also makes sense for us on the business side. And we tried some different things. And ultimately, here we are today.
Yeah. Did you ever convert anyone who was like a slime lover to a putty lover? Did you ever get any letters like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
No way.
Well, one thing that slime did is it increased the number of complaints we got that it's all dried out. Right? Because they are expecting this watery, goopy slime. And putty has a much more body and a thicker consistency to it. And so it didn't sort of dry. But we always took those things as opportunities. Anytime a customer reached out to you with a complaint, now you actually have their attention, which is like the hardest thing to get. So how can you turn them into a convert? And I think we had a great success rate.
That's so cool. Love it. Okay. Love it. So building a strong customer base usually, like you said, helps brands weather ups and downs of trends like slime, lifting other compounds like putty, and also dough. We'll get into that too. How do you foster your loyalty among fans of Crazy Aaron's? Do you have a community of some sort?
I think we do have a community, but we don't have a website
like
with
a
community.
Meeting. Yeah, like a meeting place.
Right. We don't have a meeting place.
No.
I think the way you do it is you are really authentic and honest and really care about your product. And I think if that can come through in the design of the product, it can come through in what your company is doing. Like the specialty buyers, they felt and understood what I was trying to do. In terms of that complete loop of a product that it makes people happy, helps people, is also made by people who need help. Like it closes the whole circle, right? So they're telling our story. They're telling our story to consumers. Now, if the product wasn't good, nobody cares how good the story is. And I've seen a lot of brands that try to lean on some kind of social aspect to sell their product. It's a nice to have every time. I wish it wasn't a nice to have, that we could all do good in the world and everyone would reward us for it. But you have to have a product that actually delivers the value the customer's asking for. And I think we did that, making a product that was the highest quality on the market consistently. All of the copycats always fell short. They were too sticky. They were too gooey. They actually did dry out. Our putty never dries out.
Really? I'm going to go open up one of my old cans.
Never dries out.
I'm going to go check it.
All of those things, just being true and honest to that, and just our marketing and our brand image all based around that.
Yeah.
It works.
What's really interesting is you said consistency. There's always inconsistencies when you're working with a factory overseas. It just happens. But the fact that you have a factory local to you, you can maintain that consistency more and you can monitor it more closely. And I just hadn't really thought about that as such a big, massive competitive edge you have.
I mean, it's easier because it's right here on the other side of this wall.
Not easier to build, though.
But it's not easier. It's not easier to build. It's not easier to maintain. Every day is a battle, is a struggle, right? You are working, like the entropy increases. That's the rule of the universe. Everything falls apart. So every day, all of our efforts are put into keeping that quality and consistency and not letting it come apart.
Yeah, but I think that focus, it's just, man, you're making me rethink some business decisions I've made recently. Like that focus on your core competency allows you to keep perfecting it and not have to worry about all the extra side things. If you had just a factory in China and you were like, we're going to go after all the compounds, and there was some inconsistency with the putty, you might think, oh, maybe people just aren't into putty right now. You wouldn't be working to tweak and perfect that. I don't know. That's
because how much sampling are you doing of the product that you're bringing over? What's the percentage of them that you're opening, that you're doing quality inspections on, right? We have a line and it does, a very high rate of putty coming off. There's someone walking over to that line every 7 minutes and taking samples and checking them for quality.
Wow.
Because it drifts, labels go sideways.
Quality assurance. Okay.
The perforation on the heat seal goes bad. The weights are wrong. The putty is the wrong color. There's some contaminant, dust got in there, dirt, whatever. So it needs to be sampled and checked. And you're not going to be able to get your factory to just do that because you ask for it. They're not going to. They're going to tell you, yeah, of course we do all that. It's fine. And you're not making medical products, which sort of have legal requirements to that extent.
Yeah.
But anyway, so if someone wanted to make a product and it was fairly, a complex thing that was special to them, get on a plane and get an apartment and go over there and stay there. Be there for the production run. Don't go to see the final product. Don't go to just do a quick inspection or to have them air freight you samples for you to check. Go and be there. And you might have to be there for some time, but that's an investment in your future that it will be done correctly. Because Azhelle, how many people are starting off and they get that delivery and the whole container is wrong.
Oh my gosh. I've had where there was like a leak in the box or something. So half of the doll's hair was wet and like moldy.
And then where are you? You barely had money to order that container.
I know.
What do you do now?
I don't know.
So, the insurance policy of going to live there for a month.
I had a student who had blood on their doll. It was just a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that for new creators because when you work for a company, you work for a big company full time, they send you there, but they also have QC team that is there the whole time. But yeah, you're right. The only other way to manage that, unless you're hiring a Kima, but they're not going to give it the care you're going to give it.
They don't know all the things in your head. You don't even know to write down in documentation. Right. They will do what you document very well, but you don't. But something will go sideways and you won't find out about it. And here, as we were building our factory, 1,000 things went wrong. 1,000 things I could never even predicted. Things I didn't even know were things that could fail. Yeah. But because it was right here, we were able to catch it right away and fix it.
Oh, and because it's right here, all of these changes that happen with container costs don't even affect you the way that everyone else is freaking out, right? Or no?
Am
I wrong?
Container costs did not have a major impact on us.
Yeah.
But what did have an impact is this port strike that's happening right now.
Oh, right. You still have to ship.
Because all of our exports to all of the other countries in the world that want their thinking putty, that is all currently sitting in containers in my parking lot, and I can't get any trucks to pick them up because there's no ships to put them on.
Okay, but you still are good in the US. I'm just saying. That's something that most people don't have.
We're a diversified company, and
That's
people
crazy.
want putty all around the world,
So
and slime and dough.
Well, I guess you might have to build some more local factories in other countries is what I'm hearing. That's what
Sounds like more time in an aluminum tube for me.
No, maybe you get, I don't know. Yeah, true. All right. So I want to talk about the future of compounds. Do you have any predictions for the next big thing in the compound side of the toy industry, or maybe the sensory side of the toy space?
Well, if I did, I might not be able to share them.
I know.
I
I was trying. I got to
But
try.
I definitely have seen over 26 years, sensory was not a word. Fidget was not a word.
Mm-hmm.
Idle play was not a thing. That is play where you're using the product while doing something else. You're watching a movie while playing with your thinking putty.
Oh.
You're watching a movie while pressing your fidget cube. But they are here and they're not going away. I see a lot of derivative product and I see a lot of viral product where it's something that already existed, but now it's being co-opted into sensory and fidget and squish. It's not going anywhere. I think customers crave novelty. We're in a business of what have you done for me lately, right? Even our thinking putties, SKUs that I made, which successfully sold, and were top sellers for 10 or 15 years. Wow. Eventually they sunset and it's time for something new, even if it's just a change of color or artwork or whatever. So I think that there's definitely room in the space and there's opportunity for people who just notice their child sort of obsessing over something really simple, 2 pieces of cardboard and the way it's folded together, to be able to turn that into a business.
Oh, okay. Is there another word? I hadn't heard idle play. I'd heard something else that is relevant for games, but I can't remember the term now. It's like where you play a game while playing other games. It's like there's a game that goes on that you play throughout like a party. That is like kind of a game that runs.
Metagaming? I don't know.
It's werewolf. If you were to play werewolf, but you weren't all sitting at a table and it was like a game you were playing while a party was going on, there's a name for that is escaping me. But idle play is similar, but for toys. Is there any other phrase that you heard that's been popular lately? Can I get that out?
I mean, I would say calling the category manipulatives and then sort of seeing that category. I guess we were saying kidults, but now we're talking more 18 plus, right? Yeah. Which just sort of takes me back to where I started, which was, of course, 18 plus. We're all stressed out of our minds. We sure could use something to fidget with to help us focus or quit smoking or stop picking our hair or scratching our skin or doing all these things.
Habit forming putty. Okay.
Well, yeah. So.
Oh, cool. All right. The last thing I want to talk about today is inventors, because we're talking a little bit about innovation in the future of compounds. If there are inventors out there that have ideas for putty, and also we didn't talk about Land of Dough. Oh my gosh, we might have to back up and talk about that. Do you work with inventors?
I do work with inventors. Look, I am always out there looking for the thing I didn't know I need, right? And people say, well, what are you looking for? I don't know. If I knew what that next great invention was, we would be doing it. And we have worked with inventors in the past who've come to us with some tremendously cool ideas that I never would have thought of, that we bring them in, they get to be part of the creative process and ultimately get a product, on the shelves of it's not only specialty toy stores, but mass merchandisers, just like at working with any toy company. What we do really well at Crazy Aaron's is make compounds. Right? We basically have a chemistry factory here to make all of these things, and we're able to package it and ship it out. And so one is innovative chemistries and compounds. Now that's maybe a more rarefied group of people who are coming up with those chemistries. And sometimes they're amateur in the sense they came up with something, and then we come and use our expertise to sort of run the toxicology, make sure it's all safe, make sure it doesn't grow mold, like kind of we can do the finishing on that chemistry to make something unique and interesting. On the other side is what can you do inside the packaging? Because we're not made overseas, it's much harder for us to sort of make new packaging shapes and sizes. And we're not doing a lot of hand kitting. There's some automation that is what allows American labor to do this cost effectively. And because of that, we really excel if the idea is sort of can fit inside the tin, which I also love from a sustainability perspective. Like we're not using lots of vac form plastic, and we can just make a paper box with a metal tin that is recyclable, with the putty that has a good environmental profile, and then the stuff goes in it. And that's the same for the dough and the paper cups and the slime, etc.
So when it comes to compound innovations, what are some key characteristics that you're looking for something that's surprising, something that's, I don't know, manipulative? Are there key traits that would make a good invention that would perk your ears up?
I guess I would say it's classic play with a twist.
Okay.
Right? So what do I mean? All of the sort of play patterns that exist, they exist. You could document them.
Mm-hmm.
What makes novelty and what drives the toy industry is that twist, that newness, that, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Now, sometimes you see that as licensing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take the same play pattern, but I'm going to put Disney princesses on it, and that's going to drive sales. But other times it's sort of the, the inventiveness of it. I mean, look at a game like Jenga, right? I mean, it gets referenced so many times in our industry.
Yeah.
It is so simple. It is so straightforward. You can imagine a bunch of kids out in the woods building something out of sticks and then pulling them away and playing a game. It's like a street game. And that's why it's so appealing. But then they made Jenga, and it's the same game with a twist, right? It's more formalized in the shape and structure and the rules. So something like that, anything that sort of can use the compound with another thing, but not sort of a whole activity set, more something that can fit inside with it, that gives it something different, something unexpected. Wow, wonder, amazement, and especially these days, something that films really well. Because kids, even if they're not posting on social media, they're making hundreds and hundreds of private videos of them talking to their phones and showing sort of an imaginary viewer what they're doing. That form of play goes really well with those kinds of products.
And one example of that would be your fortune telling putty, because it's an inventor item and it has yes and no beads in it. So you can ask your fortune, play with the putty, and then stretch to reveal. I remember when you showed me, that was so cool. That might have been when we first met, actually. So that is an innovation that fits into a tin. And that's what you're looking for if someone's going to innovate the compounds you already have.
And it's also an idea that can be reskinned 100 different ways to stay fresh and follow trends. Ooh. So you can do a version that's like fortune teller, but you can also do a version that's executive decision maker, and you can make 100 different kinds of that idea so that you can constantly be trying things, try things for different channels. They might be more successful in certain channels than others. A good idea is sort of the skin is not the idea. It's the underlying gameplay. And then it can be skinned to sort of match the zeitgeist of the now.
That's one of the toyetic principles I came up with when I first started this podcast. It's called scalability by theme. If your idea is toyetic, it's scalable by theme.
I like it.
Nice. So, okay, we have two closing questions for you. One was actually given by our last guest on the podcast, Marina, the founder of Hugimals. She didn't know who this question was going to go to.
She sends it forward.
She sent it forward. So you're going to send one too. I forgot to tell you that. Sorry. But so Marina, spoiler, Marina sent someone, and it's going to be you, this question. What is one mistake that you made in your business along the way?
It was, as I started to hire employees, keeping employees who were not passionate about the vision and were not great performers, but we're good, we're okay, we're fine, and not realizing the huge gulf between sort of okay and great. And that as a business, we were able to go out there and get great. We were worth it. And if I had done that sooner, I think I would have slightly fewer gray hairs. I'm looking at myself in the camera here. And also, success begets success, and successful people like to work with other really strong people. And so building that really strong team and being honest about sort of poor and mediocre performers would have propelled this organization to excellence sooner.
Ooh, yeah. I could say while you were speaking this whole interview, I was like, man, I wish I knew about this company when I was starting out, because I still would, but I would have loved to work with you full time. Like I would have you're so passionate about what you're doing. You want to make good product and you're focused. You're not stretching people 1,000 different directions, but like that. No, definitely.
Sometimes I am, but then we prune.
Well,
right?
I mean,
I'm open to feedback too, which is you're stretching us too thin.
Well,
okay, what do we cut?
Well, everyone works hard, but there is a huge difference, and I've done this before, in working hard on, let's say, I do doll houses versus I do doll houses and plush and playthings and wooden toys. So like having the focus of just like Land of Dough, Putty, and Slime even is not typical of a toy company, is what I'll say.
Add to that, are you making a toy or are you a sales rep for a factory?
Oh, Ouch.
I don't mean that in a bad, no. I don't mean that to insult. You can be either, but choose which one you're doing.
That's so true. A sales rep for a factory. Damn.
And the reason I say it is because as the internet makes this world even smaller and continues to disintermediate,
very true.
Those factories are not going to need you as their sales rep, and they're going to become your competitor, your competition.
Oh, I already see it.
But if you are bringing innovation and design, then you will survive and thrive in that era because your products will stand apart. And you'll survive and thrive with buyers because your products will stand apart.
Yeah. And it's going to be your brand. Oh, so good. All right. My final question for you today, Aaron, is what toy or game blew your mind as a kid?
Oh, gosh. I would say it was Dark Tower.
What's Dark Tower?
The board game, right? Do I have the name right? I'm going to check. I'm pretty sure I do. It was a Hasbro game.
Dark Tower. Oh, it's a movie, apparently.
Yeah, and it came with the tower.
Ooh. Oh, I've never seen this before.
I just love this game. I mean, it has sort of a D&D vibes. Yeah. And look, there's a Return to Dark Tower Kickstarter special.
It is not on Etsy for $571.
Apparently it is. Well, I got one at a garage sale for $1 in 1980, whatever. And I loved it.
What do you like about this game? What's the energy of it?
There's a computer in there that like you sort of spin and it randomizes what happens. Oh. And it just completely brought me in like that I was really in this fantasy world. And oh my gosh, a ghost just jumped out. And oh, I found a sword. And but it wasn't on the computer. So it seemed very physical and very real. It would sort of have inside is a column with different panels. And it would spin when you would press the button, and then one of them would light up and there would be a sound effect that would match which panel lit up. So it was a very cheap way of now you just have it show on the screen whatever you want it to do. But obviously it wasn't the screen. They were sort of backlit slides. And I love that game.
That's so cool. Thanks for sharing.
One thing I used to do was sort of take games apart or toys apart and build them into larger Rube Goldbergian, things. So how do I connect like my little toy train that when it gets to the end, it'll bump on the Dark Tower and then the ghost and then it'll make a thing fall. And, I love all that.
Oh, that's so cool. Thanks for sharing. I love that. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey from tech professional to toy industry innovator and entrepreneur, and for sharing your thoughts on how to have a successful toy business and make your local factory, everything that you shared today. I know our listeners are going to take away major insights from a lot of this episode. Now, if you love this podcast and you haven't already left a review, what are you waiting for? Your reviews are what keep me coming back week after week, and it's what entices guests like Aaron to come and drop their knowledge on this podcast. So please like this episode, leave a rating and review. And as always, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I know your time is valuable and that there are a ton of podcasts out there. So it truly means the world to us that you tune into this one. Until next week, we'll see you later, toy people. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Making It in the Toy Industry podcast with Azhelle Wade. Head over to thetoycoach.com for more information, tips, and advice.